grab your Bibles and join me in the text that has been selected by the Education Enhancement Committee, which takes our attention to the first chapter of the book of Proverbs, verses 8 and 9. That's the book of Proverbs, chapter number 1, verses 8 and 9. My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. Listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. For a few moments, I want to talk and teach from the subject, remember what you've been taught. Remember what you've been taught. I was sitting in reflection. As a youth minister, you all make me feel old. I was watching as the graduates came down, and I remember my first Sunday here. First Lady was not here because she was chaperoning Brittany's high school prom. Now she's graduating with a bachelor's degree, and I watched as Jasmine came down, and I chuckled to myself. Brianna came down, Brianna Mosby, and I chuckled to myself because I remember baptizing Brianna, and she came in the pool and she had her hair out. She said, "Don't wet my hair." I'm trying to remember my theological questions. Don't wet my hair. And it is so good to see our young people grow up, and I'm very proud of the work that we've accomplished with our youth choir. Caitlin on soprano and Lexi on alto. They were like Gladys Knight, and then Maurice Malik and Nicholas came in like the Pips. Well, they were ready. They were ready. And we endeavor to teach them something. See, teaching, it used to be a systematic component of the church, particularly in the history and the legacy and the heritage of our people. It was a systemic component of the black church because it was the only place that you had to go to learn. And as Pastor Bedford so wisely observed as Brittany was given her comments and her reflections, it's nowadays the place where you can get reinforcement as you go out into a predominantly white workforce and institutions of higher learning. It's a place that when folks stand and tell you what you can't do, it's a place where you can come and be taught, but you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. You see, we misinterpret that scripture. It goes on to say for greater, which is the superlative for great, which then would suggest to me, brothers and sisters, that there's a great force already in the world, but there's a greater force that lies on the inside of us that we need to propel us through the ups and downs or the vicissitudes of life. And so, yes, teaching it has been a systemic component of the church, and more specifically the black church. And if historically it's been a systemic feature of the church, then my observation is that we are in danger of system failure. And our failure is not external. Because if you look on the outside, it would appear as if all is well. We come to church, Elliot, in very nice vehicles, and after church we dine at very nice restaurants, and then we resort to very nice homes after we take in our meal. And we've built beautiful sanctuaries, and we have wonderful cathedrals. And so on the outside, it would appear as if the system is working just fine. But something is going on the inside, because we see symptoms of it manifesting itself on the outside. For on the outside, it would appear as if everything is well, but there are symptoms that something is not right. Story is told of a young girl who sustained a sports injury. And on the outside, it appeared as if everything was okay. She was able to get through breakfast, and she went through class, and she took her standardized testing. It appeared, Deke, as if everything was okay. But she noticed that when she walked, it was a little tender on one side. One of her legs bothered her a little bit, but she persisted, Lofton Harper. She kept going because she thought everything was okay. She was able to get through her classes, and she laughed, and she got through dinner because it seemed like everything was okay, but she couldn't shake this fever because there was a symptom that something else was going on. She went to the doctor, and the doctor said, it seems as if everything is okay, but this fever is an indication that something is going on the inside. They took Tanya to the x-ray machine, and the x-ray revealed, Dr. Bedford, that she had several broken bones. And because something was broken on the inside, even though it looked as if everything was okay, it was slowing her ability to function. Now, I've got to let you know that there is an assumption that we've been teaching, and there's been assumption. Matter of fact, in the text that we read, it says, remember what you've been taught, but inherent in that passage is the assumption that we've taught something. So this morning, I don't want to holler, I don't want to scream, I don't want to spit. I just want to give you a few nuggets, especially to our young people, to remember, because we've done them a grave injustice if we've not equipped them with something to remember when they go out into high school, when they go on to college, when you're at the world of work. But if we give them that nugget of faith, as a matter of fact, I think Scripture refers to it as a mustard seed of faith. You'll be able to stand in front of any mountain of opposition, and you'll be able to declare to that mountain to move out of my way. And I know some of you are tempted to take that literally and say, well, if I was to go over to Africa and stand at the foothills of Mount Everest, and I had a mustard seed of faith, and I looked at Mount Everest and I said, move out of my way, that mountain probably wouldn't move. And I would say to you, yes, you are probably right. But what you need to understand is that when you have a mustard seed of faith, you can stand at the bottom of opposition when somebody tells you what you can't do. And you can remember that this little skinny, light-skinned boy stood in the pulpit and told me, but I can do all things through Christ. And so that mountain of opposition will move. It'll move out. It'll move out of your way. And so I want to talk a little bit about purpose, because I am convinced that we are all very well prepared. We are structured, and we know what it's like to maintain a busy calendar. We have our cardio days, and we have our leg days, and we have our upper body days, and we know what days we need to study, and we know we've got our schedules down packed. I've never seen a generation of young people that's been so busy. Caitlin's calendar is more coordinated than mine. She's got piano on this day and vocal training on this day and all of that preparation, but I'm afraid that preparation without understanding purpose doesn't do you much good. You can be prepared, but if you have no clue where you're going, then what good is it to prepare? Never shall I forget, in 7th grade, we got a new family computer. And at that time, computers were, nowadays, you all got stuff in your pockets that did more than these great big machines that we bought. And I was so excited, my family came home with an HP Pavilion. And the monitor, the screen was about this big, but the monitor itself was about that large. Tristan, it came with a great big old tower. They call it the Central Processing Unit. And then before we got home, I told my mom when we left Best Buy, we went all the way to Maryville, down at I think that's the intersection of 65 and 30. We got this computer, and I said, now before we get home, we need to stop by Venture. See, now that went over most of your heads. Yeah, that's before Target. See, Ventures, and you knew it was a Venture because it had these diagonal shaped black and white lines. That's it. We had to stop by Venture because I needed to get a long phone cord, because I had to plug that phone cord into the phone jack, and then we ran it all the way to the modem on the computer, and that's how you got on the internet. Wasn't no Wi-Fi. It wasn't no Wi-Fi. And then right when you establish that connection, now your mama got to get on the phone. Your connection is wiped out. Nowadays, it's about speed and, making sure my devices are charged. But we had to connect to the internet, and it sounded like a fax machine when it was trying to get a connection. Well, anyway, I remember looking at the box, D, and the box had all the stats of the computer. And it said it had this speed, and it had this much memory, and it could function like this. And it had this processor on the inside, and it was equipped with this. And it had all the stats. And then the box stopped, and it was a line. And up under that line, Microsoft printed its slogan. And even at that time, it stopped me, and it made me think about that thing philosophically. Because up under that blue line, Microsoft printed their slogan. And it had all the stuff that the computer was equipped with. And it showed everything that it had on the inside. And then there was a blue line. And in great, big, bold, black letters, it said, "Where do you want to go today?" In other words, it's not enough to be prepared. It's not enough to have all of the right stuff on the inside. Because if you have no clue where you're going, what good does it do? Right? And so I'm concerned that so many of our young people, we have no clue where we're going. We're operating through life with no sense of direction. It looks good on the outside, but I ask you the question that box asked me back in 1996. But where are you going? Where are you going? You've got to have preparation and you've got to have purpose, but beyond expectation, beyond preparation and beyond preparation and beyond purpose, you've got to have some type of expectation. You've got to set some standards for yourself, right? You not only is it good enough to be prepared, and not only do you need to know where you're going, but you've got to set some sort of expectation, or you just wander through life aimlessly. Anybody ever see anybody like that? They don't know where they're going, and the wind blows and they're over here, and the wind blows again and they're over here. They just scatter. No, Brittany, no roots, right? And the first sign of difficulty, the first sign of adversity, they're ready to throw in the towel. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Right? You've got to have some expectation and know where you're going. I remember one February. Sis Page and I went to a conference. I was an undergrad, and she joined along, and we were in the conference. Now, if any of you ever been to Minneapolis in the wintertime, I don't believe God is there. It's another kind of cold. But interestingly enough, Deacon Phillips, if anybody is familiar with the city of Minneapolis, almost the entire downtown area is connected by a series of skyway passages, skyway tunnels, right? You can literally get from the parking garage to the hotel to many of the downtown centers. Target corporate is down there, and you never have to go outside because everything is connected by a series of skyways. So I remember my wife and I, we took off. It was after the conference, and we, Sis Hazelwood, we were going to get something to eat. And the thing about this skyway is it's a lot of stuff in there. Right? There was a Coach store. There was a Joseph A. Banks, and there are malls, and there are shopping centers, and there are food courts. There's all kind of stuff in there. See, we didn't know where we were going. We'd prepared. We'd set up the budget. We'd saved for months. And we got in the skyway. We knew we were hungry, but we had no idea where we were going, and so we were wandering. And when you're wandering and you have no destination in mind, it's easy to get distracted by stuff that pops up along the way. Right? I know I'm hungry, but here's pretty Tony. Right? I know I should be going over here, but she looked real good, so I'm going to take a pause over here. Right? So you've got to have some measure of expectation. And so finally, and you may say, well, Reverend Page, that's been me for a long time. I'm 3/4 of the way through my training. I'm almost at graduation, and I'm still lost. But you've got to do what I did in that skyway. There was a great big directory, and I found a great big red dot in the center of that directory. It said, "You are here." And I had to pause and reflect and get my bearing in the greater surrounding of things and figure out where I was going, or else I'd never get there. Because you've got to prepare, and you've got to understand what your purpose is, and you've got to say, I've got some place to be. So I don't have time to loiter. I don't have time to wander aimlessly through life because I'm going somewhere. And then I've got some sense of expectation, because you've got to know what you're expecting. Can I tell you why? It was around 2006. I was home for summer break, and I was outside in my mama's driveway washing the car because, you know, her water was free to me. So I was getting down washing the car. My sister, who now lives in Hyde Park, she came outside because she heard some chimes going off. It was the ice cream truck. She comes outside, and because when they were kids, they couldn't pronounce my first name, so they called me Bruh Bruh. Now, why these fools at age 27 still call me Bruh Bruh, I can't figure out. But she was round about 7th or 8th grade or so, and she heard the ice cream truck. So she came outside and she said, Bruh Bruh, can I have 50 cents for the ice cream truck? And me being a halfway decent guy, wanting to be a good big brother, I made up in my mind that I was going to give her $1. And I said, yeah, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. Just let me finish rinsing this part off so that I don't have spots on the car, and I'm going to dry my hands off, and I'm going to take care of you. So I finished what I was doing. I rinsed off the car, and I was ready to go in the ashtray and get out 50 cents and give it to her. Next thing I know, my sister came around the corner with an orange push pop. And she calls my wife Noodles. That's another story I can't. I said, Danielle, what happened? She said, oh, don't worry about it, brother. Now, remember, I was going to give her $1. She said, don't worry about it, brother. Noodles gave me 50 cents. Watch this, church. 50 cents look real good when you don't know $1 is possible. Don't let no Negro come along and give you something less than what you deserve. You set some expectations for yourself, and that's what you go after. Don't you step over a dime, and don't you step over $1 to pick up a dime. You've got to have some expectation. You've got to know what to expect so that when it comes along and it doesn't measure up to that standard, you know to walk away from it. When I go to a restaurant, I already know what I want to eat. Don't bring me no menu. I don't need to know the specials. I showed up knowing what I came in here, and if it come out, if it's not right, I'm going to tell you about it. Because I've got expectation, but so many of you are walking through life chewing on something that's dry and no good because you never knew what to expect. But I've stopped by today to teach you that something greater is possible for you, and it lies on the inside of you. If I gave you a pumpkin seed and asked you what it was, so many of our young people say it's a seed. But the devil is a lie. It's a pumpkin. And you've got a seed of greatness on the inside of you. All you've got to do is stir up the gift on the inside of you. Don't be timid. Don't be afraid. Isn't that what Brittany said? She showed up to college and she was afraid and she was nervous and she was timid. But God has not given you the spirit of fear. What God has given you is power. He has given you love. And He has given you soundness of mind. You've got to have preparation and you've got to have purpose and you've got to know where you're going and you've got to have some expectations. But wait a minute, watch this. There's always a balance to things. Here it is, Elliot. Don't let preparation, purpose, and expectation rob you of your experiences in life. Yeah. Now, here's where the balance is. Because some of you at age 19 can tell you where you're going to live at, can tell you what the house is going to look like, can tell you what you're going to drive and what your wife is going to drive and how many kids you're going to have and tell you where you're going to go to school and what you're going to study and what your GPA is going to be. And then when you come out of school, you got it all figured out. And the problem is when you become so rigid, you've left no room for God to operate in your life. You've got to be prepared. You've got to have some expectation. Yes, you've got to make a plan or else you can't take a stand. I get all of that. But leave some operating room for God in your lives. I went through that myself when I was 19, when I was 20. I had it all figured out. And the first time life happened, I was ready to go back home and call it quits. But you've got to leave room for God to operate in your life. Pastor Hazelwood, you know, we went to that. Did you get the picture? We went to the Cubs game. And I sent you a picture. Me and the wife took the kids down to the Cubs game. And I'm the rigid planner, right? I've got it all figured out. So I had the ballpark application on my smartphone. I had the route pre-selected. I already set up my Pandora station, so I knew what we were going to listen to on the way. The car was clean. The tank was full. We're going to the Cubs game. I got this thing figured out. Then, Pastor Hazelwood, we get down there, and I get down to Wrigley Field, and I could not find parking.
And then there was a Middle Eastern man I saw on the side of the road, so I let down the window, and he said, I've got parking for you. I got parking for you. I said, okay, you ID parking. I said, what I owe you, about 10, 15 bucks? He said, you park here, $50. I almost cursed. Caitlin had to catch me. $50, you son of a Caitlin. Daddy, oh, I'm sorry, praise the Lord. Sorry, God is good and greatly to be praised. We paid $50 and we walked up, what is it Sheridan or whatever it's on, and there was the big marquee that said Cubs, and Angelique, my wife, she says, we got to stop and get a picture. Now, I know y'all, on Instagram and all this, and I saw your comments. That's real kind, but can I confess? Confession is good for the soul. I see y'all, what a beautiful family. What a lovely family. Y'all don't know, we was on our way to divorce court trying to stand up straight, fix your face. Will you wipe your nose, boy? Okay, here come, say cheese. Oh, what a wonderful family. Right? You got to be careful looking at other folks in these snapshots of time, because you never know what goes on in the background. And now you didn't set up all your hopes and dreams trying to be like somebody else. And if the Lord gave you a portion of the hell that they go through, be careful, be careful, be careful. Be careful. We took the picture and it looked real good, though. It's on Instagram. It's up there. It looked good, Doc. It looked good. We go in there, and I need all y'all to come back ours now because, Caitlin, Daddy, can I have the nachos and the baseball cap with Gatorade? And then the boy wanted a hot dog and, a small business loan later. Us come to Pages, as Pastor would say. Here us come. I had the app. I had everything ready. And I looked at it, and the ticket said me and Logan were in section number 4, seats 11 and 12. But my wife and my daughter was in section 5, seats 112 and 113. I was instantly agitated because I prepared myself. I was ready. I did all the right stuff, and only to get to the ballpark to discover that I'm with Logan in section 4, seats 11 and 12, and my wife and Caitlin are in section number 5, seats 112 and 113. I was instantly agitated. So I went to the usher, and it wasn't nothing that man. He was doomed from the start. And I said, oh, Lord, I know Pastor Hazelwood is watching the game. He's going to see me going to jail today. It's real bad when you lose your training and come here, fam. Hey, bruh, let me holler at you. Right? All training out the window. I'm just ignorant now. Bruh, let me holler at you for a second, man. Come here, let me holler at you. He says, I understand, but see, he says, you don't understand the seat and sequence of the stadium. He says, you don't understand. I get that you're frustrated. So he said, I'm not going to even try to explain it to you. But he said, I tell you what, you get your son and you go to section 4 and you start looking for seats 11 and 12. And while you're doing that, I'm going to have your wife and your daughter go to section 5, and they're going to start looking for seats 112 and 113. And what you'll discover is that when you find your seats and your wife finds their seats, you will have met in the middle. That's my exit. I've got to let you know, quit trying to figure everything out. You just go your way, and you wait for God to come his way, and the two of you will connect in the middle. Don't be so tight and try to figure it all out. What did Migos say? Just walk it like I talk it, and then God is going to meet you, and together you... God says, you're trying to figure it all out, but where were you when I stepped out on nothing and said something and everything came into existence? You're just walking, and God will walk. That doesn't mean you can stay in your dorm room and just sit there and pray. No, I need you to crack a textbook, right? And he will meet you in the middle, which suggests that I've got some work to do because God won't do for you what you can do for yourself. But when you take your ordinary and take that and put your faith to foot and walk it out, God will meet you where you are. And together, the two of you can do great things. You've got to allow God to give you experiences in life, because it's those experiences that doesn't make sense while you're going through them that adds flavor to your life. You don't believe me. I remember going through grad school and everybody else could afford a parking pass. Not this guy. My parents weren't trying to write no check for me to go to grad school. They said, boy, we paid for that little bachelor's degree. You on your own now. Wasn't trying to write no patent for nothing. So I'd meet my little European friends at the library, and when they were all done, they got in their cars and they took off to their apartments. And I always found an excuse to need to stay back. Because the reality is we didn't have a parking pass. So what my wife and I did at that time, we were staying in graduate student housing, and my wife was pregnant with Caitlin. I was sure enough poor. So what we did, Aunt Pam, was we found free parking spots around campus. But the catch is free parking spots are only good for 6 to 8 hours. So every 6 to 8 hours, me and my pregnant wife had to go find the car and move it to the next free parking spot. It was an experience. And it was ours and ours only, because everybody else in class hung the parking pass on their rearview mirror. They showed up, they parked, they got in their car, and they went home. But here come the Pages moving their car every 6 to 8 hours. Did I tell you she was pregnant with Caitlin at the time? Now watch this. If I could violate your HIPAA rights for just a moment. We were at risk for high blood pressure during the pregnancy. Doctor says we're probably going to have to go in and get Caitlin between 33 and 34 weeks. Didn't want to do it. It wasn't ideal. Said we want to go to 38, 39 weeks, but we're probably going to have to go in at around 33, 34. At 32 weeks, we showed up at the doctor's office, and this is what the doctor said. Well, we ordinarily would have gone in at 33 weeks, but it looks like you've been getting some exercise. And because you've been getting some exercise, we're going to let your baby develop properly so that the lungs are functioning and so that the brain are functioning. All I'm trying to tell you is don't look at somebody else's experience. You just walk in the experience that God has given you. And at the appointed time, God will make everything that doesn't make sense, and you'll look in the rearview mirror of your life and you'll say, it was good for me to have gone through that. Because had I not gone through that back there, I wouldn't be able to stand where I am right now. So you walk the race that God has ordained for you. Don't you be weary and well-doing. And by when the morning comes, you'll be able to tell your story of how you and God made it over together. You've got to prepare. You've got to understand your purpose. You've got to have some element of expectation. And beyond expectation, you've got to allow God to operate in your life so he can give you the flavor-enhancing experiences that develops character. That's why so many grown folks don't have any character, because they've never allowed God to operate in their lives. You ready to throw in the towel because they done turned your cable off. Negro, please. Let me share one more thing with you, and then Pastor's got to get to Red Lobster. One more thing. You've got to prepare. You've got to understand your purpose. You've got to have some expectation. Skylar, you've got to allow God to give you some experiences. Finally, and I'm going to my seat, Ariel, you've got to understand that you have potential. Jemiah, you have potential. And that potential lies on the inside of you. Share one more thing with you, and I'm going to take my seat. The story is told of an old steam engine. And that steam engine, Kendra, it sat on the tracks. And they took that steam engine and they filled its tanks, Jasmine, with very, very hot water. As a matter of fact, they filled the tanks with water and they heated that water to 211 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you find a basin and you put some water in it and you heat that water to 211 degrees Fahrenheit and you stick your finger in it, I guarantee you, you won't say, praise ye the Lord. Because that's some hot water. And that train has the potential to go hurling down the track, right? And so they took the train and they filled the tanks with water, and they heated that water to 211 degrees. And you know what it did? It sat there with all the potential in the world to go hurling down that track. And it sat there with some very hot water on the inside of it. But watch this, Elliot. Somebody came along and they did something very interesting. They took that water that was heated to 211 degrees and they raised it a notch, just 1 degree. And when you go from 211 degrees to 212 degrees, I know it sounds insignificant because it's only 1 degree. But you see, water does something very interesting at 212 degrees. My molecular biology student can help me out with this, because at 212 degrees, water has reached its boiling point. And with boiling water comes steam. And with steam comes power. So if you take that tank and you take the water that's in it and you elevate the temperature by just 1 degree, that potential energy is transferred to kinetic energy, and now that train goes hurling down the track. I just stopped by Progressive to let you know this morning to just heat up your water by just 1 degree. And if you heat it by 1 degree, all the potential in the world will send you hurling out into the world, and you can accomplish everything that God created you to accomplish. So my young people, just stay up 1 degree later and get up 1 degree earlier. You don't have to move mountains. You don't have to do anything out of the ordinary. Just 1 degree more, because the difference between good and great is the difference of God bless you real, real good. Rest on our feet. The doors to the church are open this morning. You may be here under the sound of my voice and don't know what it is to have a relationship with our God, the Creator. And that if that's you, we extend this opportunity to you to come and get connected, not with religion, but relationship with God. And secondly, you may say, I've got a relationship. I just want to get in a good Bible preaching, teaching church. Just want a fellowship of believers with me that can encourage me and connect with me and pray with me and study with me. If that's you, the doors of the church are open to you. And then finally, the third thing that we'll do is we'll open the altar for prayer at this time. You may say, I'm going through some things right now, and you might have lost your way along the way, and you might have understood what your purpose and your potential is, but you've decided to step away from it. And now you're ready to make a commitment to get back to being the man, the woman, the girl, the boy that God created you to be. You may say, I've done all of that, and life is still beating up on me. And I just need some prayer for strength to move on. That's you. The altar is open for you.